From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, April the 4th, the year 2016.
No, it's May the 3rd, May the 4th.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, you said April.
Oh. Okay.
It's May the 3rd, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, but the show will be May the 4th.
Oh, that's right.
See, it's a couple of months away from the show.
I'm out of practice.
He's out of practice. So.
And now we welcome back Jim and Rich.
Thank you, Mr. DeVita.
Oh, we're supposed to talk now, huh?
We're supposed to talk. Jim, after 2 months, forgot how to talk.
I forgot what we do here. A lot of people wonder what we do here anyhow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
So what'd you do while I was gone?
I interviewed Mark Bruno, our first open date after you, or should I say open, well, whatever it was, the first date we would have normally broadcast. Yeah. And then I just said, hey, I'm taking a vacation. That's it.
That's right.
So,
that's right. I depend on you to do things, and this is what happens.
Jan called me up. I think maybe the first time after the Bruno interview, he thought maybe I would have something going, and I think then after that, when I said no, he just said, okay, well we'll wait till they're both ready to do it again, and let's go.
Yeah. John came over, got his tax return done. I took care of that. It was just an exciting time.
So when do you guys go to jail?
What you mean we? What you mean we?
Oh God.
So I got so much has happened since the last time we all got together. I mean, geez.
Yeah,
we had the Super Bowl, and
we did. We weren't even here for the Super Bowl?
I don't think we were here for the Super Bowl. At least I don't remember being here. I don't remember much of anything, really, over the last couple of months.
Well, I mean, we had an interesting Hawks season going.
Interesting.
As usual.
Interesting Hawks season. I don't necessarily consider it a failure. It was kind of a disappointing end.
No, I think we had a chance to think about this, and I would just say probably basically just ran out of gas.
I think so.
I don't, because they played when you looked at the 7 games, they played very good hockey. They just ended up on the short end of the stick, and that happens sometimes regardless.
You had a couple of, I think if you go back and look at it, you had a couple of incidents in a couple of games that probably were a big factor.
You know what, Jan? Excuse me, Jim. I'm going in on one of these earmuffs. I'm going in and out. I think especially on one ear. One time I'm hearing Jim loud and clear through both, and then I'm only hearing
switch to
one.
another set. That's all.
Yeah, good idea.
Moments of crisis here at this point.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Going back, I mean, I think there were two points that the games could have been different. Kane winding up with that double minor in one game, and they scored there, which I think was the winning goal, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And Shaw losing his composure in that one game, and they scored then. So, I mean, it's very simple. It could have been. It could have gone either way.
Yeah,
it could have gone either way.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I don't fault. I mean, it's hard to fault Joel Quenneville, and on this show for sure, you wouldn't hear it very often.
You can't. You can't fault the Q.
The one thing that I did find, I sort of was wondering about, I guess, Dale Weiss, when he finally did get inserted about Game 5, really. I thought in Game 5 he played 9-some minutes, but even Mike Milbury had said, man, he says that guy made a difference, and he gave him, without Shaw, he gave him some physical presence, and that really helped. And then the next game, obviously, he scored the goal that ended up to be the game winner. But I never could understand why. Well, I mean, I'm not there to see the practices, but Weiss, who's an established and a pretty darn clutch player in the playoffs, with at least with Montreal, never really got, I don't think, rolling with the Hawks, and I could not understand that.
No, I didn't understand that either, and I'm wondering, is he just going to be one? You know, it's going to be interesting because they're going to have their usual salary cap issues,
right?
Again this year. And Shaw's in line for a raise.
Mm-hmm.
Is Weiss going to just be one of those that gets cast aside just for the sake of cap space? But the big issue is they got to move. They got to move Bickle.
Well, the thing
they got to do something with Bickle.
I think Bickle's money comes off of the cap this year, though.
Does it come off this year?
I think it does.
I couldn't remember if it was this year or next year.
I was going to say, if the papers are correct, then, obviously, they're human. They're not always correct. But the people they wanted to hang on to, Panik, which I think that's a no-brainer because he's not going to cost that much. But they also would like to hold on to Ladd and Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know what that would entail. And then we're talking, Jim, and you may have looked at this a little bit. The NHL salary cap being a hard cap, I understand that. But then how was it that they fit Ladd and Weiss and Fleischman onto the team with the existing cap when they were capped out and they had to jettison guys over the summer?
On at least two of them that I can think of. The other team picked up a fair percentage of a pretty good-sized percentage of the cap.
Okay, so that makes sense.
I think on one, and I can't remember whoever it was. I know one team kept. Well, they said they'd pick up like 35% of the cap.
Let me ask you this: one of the criticisms I've heard, and I'm not really buying it myself, is that, and obviously, Bowman would be darned if he does and darned if he doesn't. But he made moves to try to, make a good Stanley Cup run at the trade deadline. And, it didn't
he
work.
Really did.
It didn't work out at this point. But now you start to hear, not much, but a little criticism. Well, he gave up too much to, and I'm like.
To me, that's meatball.
That is sort of meatball. And, but what really was weird for me, it seemed last year, and I think the major guy they picked up last year would have been Vermette.
Yeah.
It seemed like...
Did they pick up Desjardins last year?
They did, too. They picked him up as well.
Yeah.
It seemed like that was a longer period of time during the season, unless they traded for him, prior to the deadline. But it seemed like he had more of a chance. There was more games for him to work himself into the... into their scheme, and then obviously had a very good playoffs. But it seemed to me that the period of time that we had the three guys that we picked up, Ladd, Fleischman, and Weiss, seemed to be shorter some reason.
It did, and I think a lot of people reacted the same way you did, that they really never had the opportunity to get into the flow. And that might have made the difference. I don't know.
Well, the one thing I could say, I mentioned that Weiss, for whatever reason, never seemed to get really going here. But the thing in Joel Quenneville's defense, and I'm not an expert by any stretch, but it never seemed that there was a logical fit for all of the lines. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Last year, that fourth line with Shaw, Desjardins, and Kruger just clicked. It fit together. And then all of a sudden you had Richards in between Kane and whoever else there was there, and then Vermette was, I think, on the third line. Mm-hmm. And it all seemed to fit right. And this year, and this would actually, people would fault Stan Bowman for this maybe more than anybody, but it's not really his fault.
I don't think it's his fault.
It just didn't seem like the guys that we got meshed well with the guys we had for some reason.
It was not a deal that you would that would be made and that would leave you scratching your head going, what did they do this for?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think Q's experimentation and his movements just didn't work right.
You know what? there's another good point. If you wanted to be critical about it, you could always probably criticize Q because he likes to juggle those lines. But then when you see things aren't working and then he juggles the lines and it causes that to, things to liven up and it works, and then everybody's okay with it. But I think the nature of what he does is the fact would be it's not always going to work, okay? But I think the good thing is when you see things the way you initially have them set up not working, just to sit on your hands is not always a good thing. He's, I think the good thing about him is he's not afraid to pull the trigger.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
He's not. He's not afraid to mix things up.
Yep.
He's not afraid to pull the trigger. In fact, I got to give you got to give credit to him, and you got to give credit to Stan Bowman, because there's guys who are not going to stand pat.
No, here's the thing. I read in the paper, Jim, where they're criticizing now who went. Dano went, and then Morin went again, and who did they go? Phil Dano went.
Yeah.
And
I was a little disappointed in that. I thought he might have some promise.
Yeah, but think about this. Now they criticize that. Did we give away too much? But then they'll go down the list of people that are still in Rockford: McNeil, Hartman, Hinestroza. Rasmussen ended up back there at the end of the year, and I'm thinking, well, no, it seems like we still have some talent there.
Yeah.
And so it's not like we stripped the cupboard bare.
No, it's not like it was done. It was done that way. I think the complaint might be, and who knows how this is going to affect him. One of those deals this year, Stan gave away the first-round draft pick.
A draft pick.
So you don't know how that's going to come back and bite him down the road.
Now that would lead me to believe, though, and I don't know which trade that was.
I don't remember which one it was.
That would lead me to believe that he, having done that whatever player, and I'm not going to say player or players that was involved, but I'll say player. They may make an attempt to keep a player that was gained in that trade just because of that reason. That's
very possible, and it's going to be interesting. I think the salary cap's going up. I think I read somewhere the salary cap's going up to $71 million.
So yes, I heard 72, but I mean
71
and change or
71 and change.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of dollars committed. You don't have a lot to play with.
I think I mentioned this to you before, Jim. I'm thinking about this salary cap thing, and I like the fact that the NHL has a hard cap. But what I would like to see is that if you develop the talent, that you have a chance. Now, you don't have to. You can't go out and break the bank on people who are not your guys. But if you develop the talent and you want to pay that talent, you should be able to keep it.
Yeah.
That's the one objection I have to the cap.
Yeah.
Now, I think the other thing, going back to the trades, and when you said I mentioned Phil Dano, and you said, that was one you sort of thought, were hesitant about. But I'm thinking to myself, I know Bowman's comment when he was asked about that. He said, you know what, we have other guys in the system that we think can do similar things to what Dano does. So that's the reason we let him go. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the days when the Dodgers were probably the prime team I think of, where they would have not bad prospects, but good prospects, guys who are going to be major leaguers, but not going to be really stars or anything, that they would trade and get value, veteran players for.
Sure.
And this is this is the key. This is where I see the Hawks and the Cubs for sure really doing some good things, because they have built their minor league systems up where they can do that type of thing.
That's the analogy I was going to bring up about the Cubs. And you know what? I heard somebody something, and I haven't really gone in to look at it. The Braves have gone from the number 29 ranked farm system to the number 3 ranked farm system.
Okay.
And I mean, they got a really bad team this year, so they're starting to fill in. But that's a very similar situation. There's always people there that can. You need to develop the talent to have them move up and fill in as other players get old, move on, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I mean, that's
important.
the Theo Epstein plan, and I think you're starting to see people adopt that.
Well, even if the players never are anything but minor league players, you still need the depth so that you're because I think it's important. I'm not saying that every minor league team you have should be a championship team, but I think it's important that your prospects are able to participate on winning teams that know how to win. Now, I'm not saying there's the goal would never be, in my eyes, to be always the champions of the Pacific Coast League or something. Oh, what's that? What are you looking at?
Ed Davender. Here's a name from the past. College basketball. Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Passed away at 49.
Oh, wow.
So anyhow, back to the...
But I was going to say that, I don't think the ultimate is always to, say, win the Pacific Coast League or whatever league you're in. But I think that you have to have competitive teams and teams that know how to win.
You have to have strongly competitive ball clubs.
And you have to have people in the system that may never be major leaguers, but you have to replenish those teams as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important.
I am trying to remember the quote, and I think it was Earl Weaver, who talked about the players, that he said you don't have to have stars. You don't have to have 25 stars. Something like you don't have to have 25 stars on your roster, but you have to have 25 guys who at least do something good.
I agree.
Some aspect of their game.
I agree. I have to say, somebody the other day, obviously a Cubs fan who's still sort of in the mode that we were in when we were kids, who are not only just Cub fan but anti-Sox as well. And I have to admit, I'm pro Cubs. I'm not super on board with the Sox, but I'm not like I was when I was a kid where, I hate the Sox. Mm-hmm. But the comment the person made about the Sox has been on my mind, and they said, the Sox obviously are playing well, but this person said they don't have the depth. And I think that's where that if the Sox run into problems this year, that's where it's going to be, Jim.
Yeah, and I'm looking. We'll transition over to baseball. I want to come back and talk about the other winter sport. You know what? No, let's talk about the other winter sport.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's get into
which is what? Basketball.
Let's get into the Bulls.
I forgot the. No, let's not. Okay, no. Let's.
No,
I'm willing. I'm always willing.
You talked about guys not hesitant to make a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And you watch the Bulls, and you watch that press conference after that last game of the season with Paxson and Foreman.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what their motive was that night. You're trying to sneak in this press conference on a night when Golden State becomes the best team in NBA history at 73-9, and you got a night where Kobe Bryant just absolutely lit up the joint on his final game of the season.
Right, yeah, 60 points or whatever, 50, 60?
60 points.
Yeah.
60. He took 50 shots.
Yeah.
And you've got those two clowns.
Well, Jim, I wish you wouldn't have said, you know what, I wish you would have just stopped when I wish you wouldn't have gone further on to say where the night Golden State became the best team in the NBA history, and I wish you wouldn't have mentioned Kobe's game, because there's two things. There's a couple things I want to say about those two things, and then we can get back to what you want to establish. Yeah. First off, I would say this: the Warriors have the best single-season record in the history of the NBA. They're not the best team in the history of the NBA.
That's right. For the terms of records, you're correct. Right.
The second thing I would say is that I didn't, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but the first thing that went through my head when I saw that Kobe scored the 60,
who laid down?
Who tanked this one? Because, and I hate, and
I thought that too that night.
This is my problem with the NBA. I mean, if Kobe had 60 in him for that night, why didn't he have 60 in him for any other night?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really, and
I thought it was.
and I'm not, I don't want to knock it really hard because if there was a sentimentality, and I don't even know who they played, but if the guys decided, hey, let's let Kobe have a night because this game means nothing, I'm not totally okay with it, but okay, it's fine.
It's like I thought. Wow, must look like an all-star game.
It's like when Denny McClain fed that pitch to Mickey Mantle. Sort of. So it's okay, but it's you don't want to see it happen a lot.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. But go ahead.
No, going
go
back
with your point.
Going back to going back to the game. He said going back to the Bulls game. It's like them saying, well, yes, we're upset. Everybody has to be accountable, but I'm almost hearing, well, we're not going to make any changes. We feel the core is still there.
Well, I think you texted me one time, and you wanted to give Fred Hoiberg an incomplete. I said I give him an F. And my reasoning on that was I saw a lot of games that there was no effort there.
No.
And let me tell you what,
No,
the coach, which I think Hoiberg has been put in a difficult position by the guys who hired him. So I'm not knocking him on his X's and O's, but I think the thing you can get out of your team is an effort. And I didn't see that on a consistent basis.
There was not. I mean, I've used the term before, fun bad, when you watch a club. Mm-hmm. You know they're bad, but you just kind of watch and you just throw your hands up and laugh.
Well, because they're making an effort, they're trying, and it's. I know that in the years that the press likes to refer to it as tanking, what the Cubs did the last 5 years. You would see guys out there who were professionals, but not great professionals,
right,
that were doing their best, and even though they were losing a lot, you knew the effort was there.
Yeah. There were nights that there was no effort.
Right, and the Bulls' part. Yeah.
On the Bulls' part.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, to wind up 42-40, I'm.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
But I'll say this: here's where. In that same series of texts that I'm talking about between you and I believe I said that Gar Forman and John Paxson, and I'll say Paxson before Forman because I don't know what Forman's background is exactly, but Paxson has played in the NBA. He's been an executive. He should know better. I give those guys a F-, if that's a possible grade, and should be fired. And I don't think you've ever heard me say that about very many people. But here's number one. When I hear them say that this was a championship-ready roster, they're full of it. Mm-hmm. They are full of it, and I think they know it. Mm-hmm. And number two is you took a coach who – now, I'm not – okay, right now people would say Jimmy Butler is the best player on the Bulls. Probably talent-wise he is. I don't consider him a superstar. I consider him a very, very, very good player.
Yeah.
Derrick Rose is a whole different story.
Derrick
I'm not
Rose
even getting into him.
Is never going to be Derrick Rose.
Right, he's not going to be whoever he was before.
It's John's favorite.
John's favorite
I
guy.
know, John's favorite guy.
But
I just got the look over the top of the glasses.
I would say this: I think you had a team of good players, and I think that team, even though he was knocked for a lot of his, the way he did things a lot of times. That team was made better by the fact that they had the coach that they had in Tom Thibodeau.
Right.
And you see what happens when – now, I'm not saying that Hoiberg's persona or whatever wouldn't work with other teams. I'm not saying that he's a washout in the sense that he can't coach. I think he probably can coach. But I think the situation was totally wrong. And when the horses felt – the driver easing off the reins, you saw what happened.
There was not the pressure that was put on. There was not the discipline that was there for Thibodeau.
Right.
And they got away with it, and there was no repercussions for it.
Right.
And it really was. It was not a fun, bad team. It was just a bad ball club.
It was. And the amazing part is they actually still had a winning record.
They had a winning record. I think back about, it's got to be 9 years ago or something, maybe. I haven't been to a Bulls. I'll admit. I mean, I watch them on TV when I see them, but I haven't been to a Bulls game in a long time.
Mm.
But went to the last game of the year, and they were expected to do well that year, and just were god awful that year. And at the last, after the buzzer, Kurt Heinrich. And all the players stood out there, and Heinrich spoke to the crowd and said, "We apologize. We apologize for the entire season. We expected more out of ourselves. You expected more out of us." He said, "and we didn't give it to you." And he said, "and we're all very sorry for it."
Yeah. It's we've talked about this before. The reason people are always so interested in sports, the winning and losing is great because you get an immediate outcome on that night. So it's not like in business where you might have to wait a year or even more for something to come into fruition. I mean, you get a nightly report card.
Yeah.
But I think the thing people really love about this is you can put together what you think is an outstanding team, and that team never does what you think it should be. I mean, it always is
last year's White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example.
Last year's White Sox. They seemed to take stupid pills the whole season.
I think that people are endlessly fascinated by this. And I certainly am. Yeah. Now, as far as the you know what? They'll keep going with the Bulls if you want to keep on that subject.
I think there was, they talked about accountability, but, everybody's got to be accountable, but nobody's going to make a change. I'm going to be interested to see what they do during the offseason. I thought the fact that they wind up, I think they're the team that has the least number of chances to get the first-round draft pick, or the first pick in the draft.
That would seem right. Cause
and somebody said they can't even be bad good.
Yeah, yeah.
to get that.
Well, honestly, I mean, they're really, considering what they want to do. And here's the other thing that sort of aggravates me. It's, we've talked about this in terms of baseball, I think, and football. Same thing goes for basketball. The Warriors right now are, the cat's pajamas, to use a old term.
Well,
and
I thought it was the cat's meow, really.
The cat's meow, whatever. And their style of basketball, the copycats are going to start to use it.
Right.
Reality is, everybody obviously isn't the Golden State Warriors.
Nobody has the talent that they have.
Exactly. They have the right method of playing for the people they have. And, the Bulls are, if the Bulls are going to try to do what the Warriors do, they're not going to have success for a while.
No,
because they don't have the people.
Because they don't have the people there. It's going to be interesting, and I want to. I'm looking as we're coming to the bottom half here, not get too deep into something before we take a break. I'm interested to see how Tibbs is going to do.
They're going to do fine.
I think they're going to do fine. The question is going to be how fast he can turn it around. And I posed the question to you, and we talked a little bit about it. Since Tibbs is going to be the president of basketball operations and the head coach, and the general manager is going to report to him, is his vision going to be narrow and say, I'm not thinking of the long-term future of the team. I'm thinking of winning now. Is that a danger?
Are we going to do a break and then come back and talk about this?
You want to meditate on that while John
Sure.
does a station break?
Yeah.
Let's do that. We will meditate while John does his magic.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, May the 4th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And your FM dial is tuned to AM FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
Some people might want their FM dial tuned to AM when they listen to us.
I just can't get out of that AM 1530. I did that for 10 and a half years, and I can't get out of it.
Sometimes you have flashbacks, John.
That's
I understand.
Right. And I've got them.
I understand.
Oh, man. John, you know what? I looked, I went on the, just before I got here, I went on the website, and it really looks excellent. And I don't think I've ever gone onto it before. But it seems like you got out of your groove in terms of our show, because John uncharacteristically has had a couple of lapses in what he normally does here.
I know. Hey, by the way, I found speaking of radio and old time stuff, and certainly you, Mr. Norwich historian. I tried to make a contact. I haven't heard anything yet, but I found some email contact information on the Those Were the Days website for Chuck Shaden.
Oh.
And I sent off an email last night, and we'll see if we can either, if he's got something that may be able to donate to the museum, or if we can put him on the phone and have a conversation with him about Norwich and Giles School and growing up around this area in the 40s and old-time radio.
That'd be fun.
So, let's see if anything can develop, and I hope I hear from Chuck, because I haven't talked to Chuck in years.
Well, let's look forward to that.
Chuck and I at one time were very, very good friends.
Chuck grew up right up the street here, John. I don't know if you knew that. His dad was a trustee for the village at one point. And Chuck grew up on the 4300 block on Ottawa.
John, I can't hear you.
That's because he wasn't by the mic.
I didn't. There was another. He didn't realize that either.
I didn't know that he's right. Geez, a lot of famous people are on Ottawa, right?
Yeah, us.
Well,
me, you and me, and Chuck Shaden.
Here's the thing, though, John. Back in the days when Norwich was founded, I mean, the village only went from Ozanam to Harlem and Irving to Montrose. So when you look back at the people who were the people who were the shakers and movers, they all came from
came from the old section.
And really, what ended up happening is, if you really look at it, most of them were from Ozanam to Oriel. If you got east of Oriel, there were some people who were involved, but not as many.
And there were still the truck farms.
Oh yeah, I remember.
There were still the truck farms over there.
I remember the farm over on Lawrence and Cumberland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, we'll see if we can develop anything. But meanwhile, back to
Rich Lang, who was the announcer for Meet the Chicago Historians, he's quite involved with Those Were the Days, the Norwich
the Norwich group.
Yeah,
okay.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. I used to be involved with one on the north side of Chicago. We had, and we used to do some shows, and I don't know if they're still together, but they were doing performances at the Edgewater Historical Society, or the Edgewater Historical Museum, which is an old firehouse on.
Yes,
Clark?
on Ashland and Balmoral.
Ashland, yeah.
I used to be Engine Company 79 quarters.
Of course.
And that firehouse was the most, every year they got a big award for being the most decorated firehouse for Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Engine 79, right?
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I knew you'd know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who else would know? Who
else would know that?
Yeah. Not too many people.
That's right.
I'll tell you that.
So back to Tibbs.
Well, I'd say this. Tibbs is the way I looked at it when he signed up with Minnesota. I'm thinking, well, what's he thinking? Because there was a rumor that the Knicks were interested and that the Lakers were interested, and two big markets.
He wouldn't have gotten the power there with either of those.
And there's two things though, because your question was, is he looking short term or long term? And I think where it's interesting is the team he picked, he can look both.
Right.
Because short term, they're going to be fine. The NBA is, it's thin. I don't. That's the only way I can say. You have your certain power teams up on top. The rest are pretty, mediocre to bad. So he's got a bunch of good young players there. So he's set up where he can compete right now, but he also can compete in the future. So I think, and I don't know, Tibbs is probably in his mid-50s or so?
Early 50s, maybe.
Early 50s.
Late 40s, early 50s.
So I would say that he's in, he's got himself in a good spot and a good position to do both. I mean, his team, if he can keep them together, is going to be there together for a long time.
And I think that the strength, and I hope he realizes and maybe learns from some of his mistakes in his relationships in Chicago, is to develop a good relationship with the person who is the general manager who will be reporting to him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
We'll see.
I don't know about that, but
we'll see.
I mean, if he's the boss, I guess the other guy's got to worry about how
But you're still going to have to develop a good working relationship, no matter what.
Yeah, I guess
because you just can't keep churning.
I think no matter that's the optimum for any situation. Sure. I mean, you got to have everybody on the same page and working together.
Sure.
So
now we're getting towards the time, especially now that the NBA playoffs and are going on, and you start to see, hopefully, the better teams. As we talked about, that there's certain great teams and certain things that just kind of mediocre and bad teams. And it kind of leads me to the point, and we've talked about this, that you see this time of year where basketball can be very much like jazz, very improvisational, and it works right. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Rushin wrote an article back, and I found it back in March in Sports Illustrated. I was pulling things out that I had to have.
Mm-hmm.
Where he called this music of the sphere. Basketball is jazz, a collaborative and improvisational American art form exported to the world and returned to us as Kristaps Porzingis, the Latvian rookie sensation for the Knicks, whose name, if you sing it right, sounds like April in Paris, the staple of Count Basie and Duke Ellington that goes Kristaps Porzingis, chestnuts in blossom. In America, our Counts and Dukes come from basketball or jazz, not Downton Abbey. Mel Counts played center for the New Orleans Jazz and missed posting up Pistons center Walter Dukes. We look to basketball or Lady is a Tramp for our barons and earls, including former center Earl Barron. He said, it's a short trip on a straight line from jazz to basketball, from Pearl Bailey to Thurl Bailey, from Fats Waller to Foots Walker, from Nat King Cole to Nat Sweetwater Clifton. Take the A-Train, the Ellington Classic, or Artis Gilmore, they'll both bring you to the same place. Meadowlark Lemon could be a jazz man or a baller. Wayman Tisdale was both. Basketball wasn't Thelonious Monk's middle name, but it was close enough. His middle name was Sphere. There's a little fact for you.
Wow. Got to remember that.
Which meter do you prefer, Oscar Peterson's or Oscar Robertson's? Rest largely how you answer these questions. Was Charlie Parker or Larry Legend the supreme bird of the 20th century? Has Steph Curry or George Gershwin provided the greater Rhapsody in Blue? Which was the more profound version of Giant Steps, Coltrane's album or Kareem's memoir of the same name? The glorious names in basketball and jazz confirm their status as preeminent modes of self-expression. How else to explain that Bo Ellis and Boo Ellis were both drawn to the NBA, as was Campy Russell and Cazzie Russell, and Rolando Blackman and Ronaldo Balkman. Devin Durant was no Kevin Durant, but who is? Goran and Zoran Dragic are brothers, but Marcus Cousins and DeMarcus Cousins aren't even cousins. God Shamgod was not the father of Fred Christ, but they all arrived at the same profession. And don't get us started on the various Marcos and Darkos and Zarkos. Basketball names can be many things, a two-word shopping list, O.J. Mayo, or a two-word description of George Harrison, Fab Mello. Cornelius Cash could have been a 19th century railroad baron. Brook Steppe, two geological formations. Thabo Cephalosha belongs in the Bible. The first letter of Chris Paul to the Cephalosians. And while Bulls guard Etuan Moore didn't inherit the sundry endorsement of his predecessor, Michael Jordan, he deserves a national snack commercial nonetheless. Lay's potato chips, you always want to Etuan Moore.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Okay.
Basketball and jazz share percussive qualities, a common vernacular of keys, sets, bass lines, and bass lines. Pro basketball has its roots in ballrooms. The Harlem Wrens played in the Renaissance Ballroom, the Philadelphia Svaz in the ballroom of the Broadwood Hotel. The reverse is true, too. Think of all the high school dances on gym floors, streamers strung from basketball hoops. Jazz isn't basketball's only musical analog. The game has inspired countless band names in various genres, among them Mookie Blaylock, which became Pearl Jam. Luscious Jackson and Tenacious D. Leonard Skinner was the basketball coach at Stillwell Junior High, as well as the gym teacher at Robert E. Lee High in Jacksonville, before gaining greater fame as the namesake of Leonard Skinnerd. I know it's only picks and rolls, but I like it, and who wouldn't? The music or the name of the game itself transports us to some interstellar space. It's probably a combination of all these things, a little bit of music, a lot of physical brilliance, and a cool name. It's 1 part Mingus, 2 parts Porzingis. The result in basketball or jazz is lights going up on a polished stage and a sight of artists going to work. The muted trumpet that is Wah Wah Jones, the drum kick pedal that goes boom-chi, boom-chi, and over there, seated in a corner, Phil Jackson on triangle. I like the analogies.
Yeah. I have one question, though. John, have you ever been to interstellar space? I didn't think so.
I didn't.
I don't think I know where that's at, so
Yeah.
I haven't been there either.
Not even in your youth?
Interstellar space. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Enough basketball.
Enough b-ball.
We can
Steve
put-
Rushin is a clever put-together of words.
He does.
Yeah, he really. And you know, I have to say this: my hat's off to anybody who can write an article like that, because that is a lot of. There's a lot of thought put into that, and a lot of research as well.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's not just.
Start to get. How do you get an idea that said, "Let me think of names that would relate to music and basketball"?
Steve Rushin, from what the couple of articles of his that you've turned me on to, is a very intelligent guy, and no question about that.
Yeah, they even put something up. I never went and looked at it. And they said, "What's the best music hoops crossover?" And they said, "Join the discussion on Twitter by using hashtag #SIPointAfter and following Steve Rushin."
Okay, that's good. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
So, Jim, we got about 20 minutes.
we-
so where are we
John,
going there?
John will let us go wherever we want to go.
Yeah, I know.
Where
you want to go?
So what do you want to talk about?
I was gonna the Sox are interesting me this year because they've obviously they've turned it around. Before the season started. And again, I'm not a Sox fan, but I can appreciate when they, I can appreciate their situation, whatever that happens to be. My comment prior to the season was that they have good pitching, which helps. But I think the thing that they did, Jim, because it could have looked again like they were just throwing bodies at the situation. But when you look at the guys they brought in some guys who were from winning situations or winning type of personalities, and I think that's really helped them in the overall outlook for their club.
Their strength has certainly been their pitching.
Definitely.
Right now, I mean, I've just happened to take a quick glance at the numbers as of today. Albers has been in a dozen games, hasn't given up an earned run yet.
Mm-hmm.
Nate Jones, a dozen games, earned run average of .75, couple of saves. David Robertson, 9 saves, earned run average of .79. Jose Quintana finally really shown what a star he can be. Earned run average of $1.47. Chris Sale hasn't lost a game yet.
Mm-hmm.
Earned run average of 1.66. Matt Latos, 4-0, 1.84. Zach Duke coming out of the bullpen, 15 games, earned run average of 1.93. The only one that's had you've had two difficulties with your starters. Rodon, who's still young and learning.
Right.
You know,
Not in the Hall of Fame yet.
no, not in the Hall of Fame, and John Danks stinks.
Well, John, I'll tell you what, I will always give John Danks a pass because he was going to be a very good pitcher, and he's never really gotten over his injury problems. And yet the guy
that's true. That's true.
continues to go out. He continues to be ridiculed by a lot of people. Yet he gives, he does his best. He tries to adjust. I tell you, I really feel for John Danks. And so I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon at all.
I had to laugh. I was looking at a Facebook feed, and somebody shared this from, I can't remember who it was. Fred Hubner, who's used to be on The Score, is on ESPN. His mother was a diehard White Sox fan, and she passed away watching the last game that John Danks pitched.
Oh wow!
She passed away during that game.
Oh, gee, see.
And they were kind of having a little bit of fun
with it.
That we're sorry to report that Mom passed away. He said we think it might have been the game John Danks pitched because she wouldn't miss a White Sox game no matter what.
I would say this, though. Frazier, Laurie, Navarro, Avila have brought a really solid presence to that team.
They brought a solid presence. I'm looking at Navarro's batting average, unfortunately, though. It's 185.
Yeah. Oh, no. There's
a professional approach that they brought.
Yeah, I would throw that out. And again, here's the thing. I don't think it's going to stay 185. His history is, he's not going to be hitting 300, but he's not going to hit it 185 either.
Yeah. Now, Todd Frazier's hitting 220.
Right.
I guess the other thing I look at is his on-base percentage is only 295.
Yeah. Well, there's where your stats, though, are, you can throw them out the window.
Because those
those guys, to me, are bringing something way bigger for the team.
I think you're right. I think there's smart players, a professional approach in things that they didn't have previously. And I wonder, was Adam LaRoche a problem in the clubhouse?
No, I don't think
so.
No, but he just was. You know what? We talked about this.
I find that,
what they tried to do with him and Abreu was backwards. But at this, I blame, and I'm not dogging Rick Hahn out, but I think the thinking on that whole deal, trying to bring LaRoche in and make him a DH, was backwards. Abreu would be the better DH and LaRoche would be the better first baseman. But as you look at the situation, you're not going to play Abreu, the younger up-and-coming player, as the DH and have LaRoche be the first baseman. So there's another one of those situations where it's a problem that was created by management, and management, in my opinion, should have seen that was not a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing against LaRoche or Abreu, and really not anything against Rick Hahn. He was doing what he thought would be a good thing. Didn't work out.
I don't think anybody looked at what they did last off season, and said, "Oh God, this is awful. What are they doing?"
No, everybody thought it was good.
Everybody thought, the two teams everybody thought won the postseason last year were the White Sox and the Padres.
Yeah,
and both of them stunk.
Now, the interesting thing in the paper today. There's talk about Rick Renteria and what a good, what good things he's brought to the Sox.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that caught my eye, because I didn't get a chance really to look at the paper, but on the front page, of course, you see the Cubs winning 7-2 in their first game with the Pirates. And what I really thought about when I saw that is, I don't think Joe Madden, in terms of handling his pitching staff or putting players in and out of the game. He might be a little bit ahead of his peers, but not head and shoulders. I think he's good at it, and so are other people. And he also does some things that everybody else does that I don't like. But what Joe Madden does,
Like what?
well, I mean, just the way that you
the
handle
formula-
the
the formula of
formula for the pitchers.
Okay.
But I think the thing that when I saw that the Cubs had won that game, the first game of the series, the thing that stands out about a guy like Madden is I think he is really good at keeping them focused on each game as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say in other years, even years where the Cubs had good teams, my guess would be you go out of town, you're playing an important series, you're going to drop that first game. Yesterday they didn't drop that first game. Not only did they not drop it, they won.
came from behind.
They won it handily.
I think they had to come from behind, didn't they, last
It
night?
was 7-2, so they couldn't have been that far behind.
They were at least down. No, that's right. It was 2-0. I think I saw 2-0 at one point.
And who pitched? Was it Hamill?
Hamill pitched.
And we started Hamill against Garrett Cole, and that worked out.
No.
I mean,
No, they actually. No, I thought they were down 2-0. They actually were only down 1-0.
yeah.
And they scored 2 runs in the third.
So
And you look at and you look at Hamill, and he pitched 5 innings, 89 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
His earned run average is $1.24. The thing that really impresses me the most, and I was coming back from up here last night when I had the game on, and I'm listening to it, and they even commented it on the radio how deep they were going into the count.
Well, that's been impressive. With the Cubs have they lead the majors in walks.
Mm-hmm.
The last I heard, which has been added on to, they had 120 some walks, and I'd say this that has been, as much as I've derided that in the past, when you look at the way it's worked out, so you're spitting the order because you have guys walking, and I think I've always said though that if you're going to go deep in the count, you just don't go deep just to go deep. I mean, if you see the pitch that you like to hit early in the count, you hit it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what the Cubs have done. But I would say this. I look at the Sox batting averages and say, well, you know what? Not only are they off to a good start, but there's room for them to grow. I look at the Cubs batting averages, and it's the same deal.
Yeah.
Because you got Jason Hayward, who nobody is saying is playing poorly at about 229, 225, 230.
I heard an item actually on the way over here. He's got some soreness in his ribs, some problems in his ribs that he's got to deal with.
Now, the one guy I would say I'm still not sold on, and when he first came up, he came up with a big bang and thought he was going to be very good. But the more I see him, the more I'm not that impressed as Soler.
Yeah. I've been a little disappointed every time I've seen him. I don't know what it is. I can't quite figure it out.
No, that's a good point because I can't quite figure. I mean, he's a big, good-looking athlete. I just I don't know if it's maybe the wrong word, but maturity or I'm not sure. Put it this way, maybe I think he's a good guy. I think they like him, and I think he's a good person. I mean, that's from the outside looking in, but there. I don't know. For some reason, he just doesn't seem to get it. I don't know.
I'm watching him, watching on the field and trying to figure out what's wrong. What's wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about somebody who really has. You saw the way he was in the postseason.
But
last year.
Well, yeah.
I thought, oh my God, is he finally coming out? And he's hitting $190 right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think we're fortunate that we have Matt Caesar, and that I'm not saying that Schwarber's injury is fortunate, but the timing of it was good because we held on to Caesar, and he's been very valuable so far for us.
Yeah. And I thought with the injury to Schwarber, I thought, well, here's a chance for Soler to really step up and prove himself, and it really hasn't happened.
No, and Jim, I would say this: if the Cubs say go on and they win the National League Central, and who knows? I I'm confident that they could win the World Series. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but I think they have the team to do it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I would there's some things, fortunate things that happened. Thankfully, Dexter Fowler was available. Now that they didn't foresee at all, I don't think.
No.
And that's been huge. So I guess my point was, if they do go all the way, you always need some good luck. And that was there was no planning in that. That was luck.
That was pure luck.
Yeah.
That was pure luck. Did you say, and I'm getting foggy here, were you talking about Hayward before when I said or Fowler earlier?
No, I was saying Hayward hasn't really gotten. I mean, he's not playing bad, but he hasn't gotten rolling.
No. I mean, he's hitting 211. But again, there's obviously since the Arizona series, he's had some soreness in his ribs, and that's the reason he was off last night, and maybe off for a little bit while they deal with that.
I'd say this though, the Cubs. Well, I mean, no team who's in a position to contend is looking ever to stand pat. So there's going to be action down the line. Somebody's going to be moved. My guess is I'll tell you what. Did you see the game that we lost to the Braves? Guess who was on the mound pitching lights out until, of course, Freddie Gonzalez went to the book. Yeah, was Tehran.
Tehran.
Yeah. So
I thought that.
Yeah.
I thought about you. During the course of the day, I happened to look at my phone and check the Yahoo scores and the Yahoo box score, and I'm looking at Tehran, and I'm thinking, oh, Rich has got to be smiling right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I just like his just the way he approaches the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's maybe I don't know where Julio Tehran is from. Obviously, he's Hispanic. But here's what I'm saying though. When I saw him several years ago, and I think that might have been his rookie year, the point I would make is that they may say he's one age, he may be older, and the reason I'm saying that is the night that I saw him, the first time I saw him, he pitched against the Cubs. He pitched around the batter, and I've told this story before. They came out to talk to him, and he stood there like, with this look on his face like, what are you guys, idiots? I pitched around the guy. I'm not wavering here. He was pitching a lights-out game. I like a one-hitter. And the maturity, it reminded me, Jim, of what the old-time pitchers would look at the manager or the pitching coach like, what are you out here for? Okay, can't you see what I'm doing here? I'm in control. I pitched around this guy, and I like that.
I could think of Gibson. With Tim McCarver coming out, and McCarver and Gibson looking at him, going, "What are you doing out here?"
Yeah, go back, throw some fingers down.
Put some fingers down. The only thing you know about pitching is you can't hit it.
But I like Tehran a lot. So he's good in my book.
I wonder when he'll be available.
Well, I'm hoping when he's available, he'll be available to us, because I know that, I think you told me, or I read it somewhere, that the Braves like Soler.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's bad is the Cubs have depth in the outfield because Soler is there. Now that you would lose that depth if you end up trading Soler, I don't know who's in the minors that could be possibly
other
brought
than,
up.
And what's his name? Almora.
Almora.
But I don't think he's ready, and I'm not sure when he'll be ready. Now, I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Wilson Contreras. Are they going to keep him down? I don't know when the clock is supposed to start on him.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be a question of how long Montero is going to be out.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now they're going with Federowicz.
Yeah,
and Ross.
Yeah,
and I think that I'd say this: if you were in a different part of the season, and if you were not scoring like they're scoring, then I think Contreras might be more of an option. I think they want to give him as much seasoning as possible. I think you might see him sometime during the year, at least from what I've read.
Yeah, I think you might
But
see him.
if
Maybe
we
as a
were
late season call-up.
if Montero was on the DL and we were struggling to score runs, their attitude might be different. You might see Contreras up here. But as long as that's not the case, I think he'll continue in the minors. I think you'll see him a little bit at some point in the season. But I don't think they intend to make that unless he does a Schwarber and just plays so well that
tears him up. You got to bring him up.
That you can't not keep him up.
There was an interesting stat I heard last night on the ball game that the Cubs' run differential right now is like 80 runs.
Jim, it's because of the walks.
It's because of the walks.
The walks,
exactly.
Because the walks are extending the innings.
Yeah.
And then the hits are more meaningful because
Yeah.
there's men on base.
Yeah.
And the walks have been huge.
You're getting a run differential number that you kind of sound like you'd hear in July.
Yeah.
You're getting it here in May. And it was interesting, too, that the run differential the Cubs had isn't much different than the number of runs the Braves have scored this year.
And I think as you're speaking here, I think maybe the thing that I'm seeing in Soler is the other young players seem to be very disciplined. And he is the guy who's not
yet.
quite there yet. I think he's trying, but I don't think he's there yet.
I think he's trying to develop it, and it hasn't quite hit. Mm-hmm. Hey, I got one more thing before we get out of here. I'm not one to watch golf on TV. And
I wish I had time to do it. I like golf.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard David Faraday when he was a commentator?
I know he's written some books, but I don't know.
He moved over to NBC this year, and I like guys who are very irreverent on any sport with their comments. But here's some of Faraday's quotes over the years on Tiger Woods. I just stood there watching him walk past, and I thought, I don't know what that is, but I know there weren't two of them on Noah's Ark.
Yeah, okay.
On his caddy, Rodney Wooler. Not only was Rodney never on the same page as me, he was seldom in the same book and often not in the same library. I like that. On giving up alcohol. I didn't quit drinking because I was a bad drunk. I quit because I was a spectacular drunk. It got to be like a video game where you get to the highest level and it's not even a challenge. On one player's errant shot, that ball is so far left, Lassie couldn't find it even if it was wrapped in bacon.
Jim, do you have more?
Yeah, I got a couple of things here.
Okay.
On beautiful weather, the only way to ruin a day like this would be to play golf during it. On golf, 1 minute you're bleeding, the next minute you're hemorrhaging, the next minute you're painting the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, that's wow. He's got some.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
On watching Tiger Woods hit a great shot, never has my flabber been so completely gasted. And on Jim Furyk's swing, it looks like an octopus falling out of a tree. On dancing, I don't dance. The Irish don't dance. We hold each other up.
Oh, there we go. I like that.
I like a guy who can make comments like that.
Jim, back to his drinking. You one of these days, I'm going to get you to stop at the Lasers, and Jimmy Cusack and Billy Griffin are in there. And I don't know. I know you probably don't know Jimmy or Billy, but you know there's some of their siblings.
Yeah.
And because their siblings are in our era, or they're our classmates.
Yeah. Right.
They know a lot of the people that we know, and it's very interesting sitting there with these guys because the other day I was talking to Jimmy Cusack, and he says, "You know Mike Veltum?" I said, "Yeah, I know Mike Veltum." And Mike Veltum was good friends with Jimmy. Had a brother that was older than Dan by a year and was in the same class as Veltum. And I said, "Yeah," and. Yeah.
I don't even remember that name.
Mike Veltum?
I don't even remember that name.
Mike Veltum was he played baseball. He was a pitcher. He was one of those guys that I don't know. Well, where they lived, he lived on Foster, just east of Cumberland. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those people, I know that Jimmy brought up another name that I knew, Greg Paddock. I knew that name, and I knew that he had been athletic, but I don't really ever remember knowing Greg Paddock. And when Jimmy started to tell me, he said Paddock, Veltum. There was a guy by the name of Bobby Lawrence that I guess his brother hung out with. Those guys all lived on Foster, and that strip there between Cumberland and Pittsburgh. Those houses there.
Okay.
I knew Mike Veltum because he played baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know him well, but I knew him well enough. And but now names come up that are familiar names from the past, and just interesting conversations.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the draft.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't even
cripe. We
didn't even get into the draft.
Remiss?
I mean, I sat there.
John's holding his hand up, Jim.
Oh, all right. I'll remind everyone this is 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich. Just a couple, I don't know if we want to go into this too much here right now. It was kind of interesting. I took the first-round mock draft from Sports Illustrated last night.
Compared it to the real draft?
And compared it to the real draft. They predicted Laramie Tunsil to be the first pick in the draft, and he was 13. Carson Wentz, they hit that right on the button, 2.
Mm-hmm.
Miles Jack was interesting because they picked him to be 4th. He wound up being 36th.
Well, it's because of his injury.
Yeah, because of his injury history. Here's one that was way off. Andrew Billings was predicted to be the 19th pick in the draft. He went 122.
What position did he play?
Defensive tackle. One that was a really interesting, and I didn't go into anything deeper on this. Getting into the second round, Jalen Mills was picked, a free safety out of LSU. He was projected to be the 33rd pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He was 233.
Those things don't surprise me.
I know.
You have people who are really amateurs, just like we are. That would be like
we're more amateur than they are.
Jim, way more amateur.
Yeah.
And here's what every time I look at a projected draft, first I laugh, but then I say the other part of me says, "Oh, God bless these people for even trying to do this because I could not do it at all."
No. We haven't even followed these people enough.
No, there's no way
to be able to do it.
So I give them credit in one sense, but at the same sense, and you know what, they have to do it because this is what's done nowadays.
Sure, you
can't not do it.
You start the first mock draft the day after college football season ends.
Yeah. And for them to be a little bit off or way off on some is, I noticed there was a name, and I looked this guy up before I came over here, because when I started to look at the draft, I'm pretty sure this guy was drafted, another tackle, offensive tackle, drafted before Laramie Tunsil. You had Jack Conklin.
Yeah.
You had Ronnie Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
And Taylor Decker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had heard, in articles I had read, the tackles that were really mentioned were Tunsil, Stanley, and Conklin. Decker, I'm not saying they didn't mention him, but he wasn't really prominent. But he went to the Lions at number
16.
16.
And it's interesting on the picks here, on SI's picks. Who'd they pick for number 16 in the draft?
Yeah, who?
Taylor Decker.
Well, that's good. See, so you're right on the money on that one.
Right tackle is no longer a spot to be overlooked this early. Detroit finds a long-term answer at this position with the OSU standout.
Jim,
that was their comment.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. You get a guy like our first-round draft choice is Leonard Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I was just looking at was either Friday or Saturday's paper before I came here. And one of the guys who covers the Bears, I don't remember which one, there was on one page there was a story about Floyd being so it would have been Friday's paper, I guess, about him being the first draft choice. And then on the very next page was something about don't be surprised if the first round pick doesn't pan out or whatever. So that vein. And I'm sitting there looking though, but when I looked at the first round choices, one of the guys that our Chicago beat writers for the Sun-Times had looked at and thought was a possible 11th overall draft choice was Shaq Lawson from Clemson, who is, I believe, also an outside linebacker. And again, without really downing anybody, but Shaq Lawson, I think, ended up being like the 23rd pick or something like that. So he wasn't even close to being even the 11th pick by anybody.
No, Laquan Treadwell was the 23rd pick.
Okay, Treadwell. I'm thinking of Treadwell. He's a local guy. Lawson, though, was down. He was picked quite a bit after, in the first round, but quite a bit after Floyd. And I think it was in the 20s somewhere. But I'm thinking prior to the draft, the articles you would read, it seemed
Shaq
like
Lawson was picked 19th.
19th, okay. It would have seemed that he might have been the player that our beat writers favored over Floyd, yet he dropped to the 19th spot in the draft. And the thing that I get a kick out of is, without really, now I've never seen, that I know of, I've never seen Floyd play. But he's 6'6" and 240, and the first thing they're saying is, well, might not be big enough to be this or that. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but you know what? There's one thing that he's got that they didn't really have a lot of last year.
Is speed.
Speed.
Yeah.
And you know what? You may just leave him at the outside linebacker.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Willie Young and Lamar Houston are good.
Yeah.
But they're not. I don't think they're. I don't know what their ages are. But and let's put it this way: when you get to be about 28 today in pro football,
You're old.
You're pretty old, and those guys are probably at least that.
Yeah.
So you're looking at younger guys, and that's that's fine. I to be honest with you, I have a lot of faith in Ryan Pace, John Fox, Vic Fangio.
Yeah. And I think with the draft, and I kind of was thinking about this and looking at some of it. Pace is obviously putting a lot of faith in his coaching staff.
Mm-hmm. He is, which is smart.
Yeah. And I think, he's, some people said, well, everybody's a project. Well, for God's sakes, everybody who comes in, most of the time they are projects.
They are. You think the first two guys drafted this year aren't projects? They're definitely projects.
They're definitely projects.
Yeah. And they're probably not going to be the best quarterbacks in the draft. Somebody that's been taken further down the line. And here's the thing.
Paxton Lynch could be the best. Well, Hackenberg could wind up.
What nobody really talks about, and is the reality, when you're a quarterback and you're drafted that high, you're going to a lousy team. So you're in big trouble right off not only are you learning the game and the pro style game, you're with a lousy team. Mm-hmm. So unless you're really a transcendent type of player, a Peyton Manning or somebody like that, who was, at least my recollection, good right from the get-go. Even Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers had some time on the bench before they appeared on the field. But unless you're that
Aaron Rodgers had 4 years?
Yeah, he had a bunch of years.
Yeah.
But unless you're that type of talent, which who knows, I don't know if one of those guys are, you're in bad trouble. Now, the guys who are picked further down, who may be picked by a contending team, have a better chance to do well right off the bat. So, and the other thing is, I think quarterback is such again, I don't know, because the first two teams in the draft, Philly took who? Wentz?
Yeah.
And who took Goff?
Rams.
The Rams. I don't know how those teams really view the people that they're drafting. We talked about this just briefly yesterday when I saw you over coffee. And I know Bill Walsh, when I'm reading his book right now, said, hey, there is no prototype. Everybody thinks that you got to be 6'4", 225 with a cannon for an arm. That's not necessarily a quarterback. So if the teams that are drafting Goff and Wentz are strictly looking at the the size and the arm strength, they may be missing something that another team is looking at something totally different. They're looking at, does this guy really play the position the way we see it being played appropriately? And that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not just looking at a big, tall guy who can see over the line and's got a powerful arm. That doesn't make you a quarterback. It gives you some good things to work with. Doesn't make you a quarterback. I mean, at least a good pro quarterback.
It doesn't necessarily make you a good quarterback, and you've got so many guys that have come out who've never taken a snap under the center.
Well, that's true too.
With the way the offenses are run in college, so we'll see. All right, John, we'll leave now.
Yeah, John,
we'll leave now. I saw you had a nap in there while we were. No, I know you were resting.
Do you have to go to the doctor, John? Today?
You got a doctor's. Okay. All right, then we got to clear out of here. We got to clear out of here. So, okay. All right, we got back into the rhythm today. We went overtime, but
yeah, that's all right. We had a lot to talk about.
We had things to talk about, and we'll get together and do this again in a couple of weeks, I guess. Is that okay with you, John? Yeah, John nods his head. Okay.
I think John missed us.
I think he missed us.
So we missed him.
That's right. We missed him. We were trying to figure out a way that maybe we could get together and do a softball game, but that didn't work. And I certainly was not going to do a track meet and spend 6 hours in the booth.
Yeah.
I love John's fat.
I think though they just took the cameras and because I think Becky was only working that. And they had two cameras. Mm-hmm. One was set up on the long jump and triple jump pit, and the other, I think, I never saw what the other camera was looking at. I assume a spot on the track, or maybe she was for the races on the track. She was just I didn't see that camera wasn't set up so you could look at it in the booth.
Okay,
but I actually. I don't want to prolong this, but Tony Guigenti had sent a nice email, thanking us for doing it, and he just wanted to get the ball rolling. Tony Guigenti is the head track coach for people who may not realize that. And I called Tony yesterday, and I said, just thanked him for the kind words, but I said, next year, and I think I mentioned this to you, I think we can do this better in terms of just the broadcast, because Jim DeRose, a great guy, and I love him. Jim and I don't have the history to, in the downtimes in a track meet,
which are many,
to fill that air. Where, say, if it was you and I, or my suggestion to Tony wouldn't be that you and I do it. Jim Page slots so beautifully into the PA part of it. I mean, he just keeps everybody informed, and keeps the people going to their events in a timely manner. Just does great. Jim would be great on the broadcast, but he's excellent on the PA. But if you, say, and Don Nensel, or myself and Don Nensel, people who can in between. Now, Don Nensel can tell us about what's happening in the meet. You and I don't know that.
We don't know that. Don Nensel was the track coach and cross-country coach for a long time.
And a very successful one.
For a long time.
And Don is still, he's got it all together. It would be perfect. And I say this, you, Jim, if you were available, or if I was available, the key thing would be Don could explain what people were seeing on the broadcast as far as the track meet, and even probably what was going on in between events. But one of us with him, I think, would be good, because then that airtime that needs to be filled when you don't have anything to say about the meet could be done between you and him, or myself and him. And I think that would improve the broadcast a lot.
We could bring out Jake Mathis stories and Glenn Cawthorn,
like that.
Glenn Cawthorn stories.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's that's neither here nor there. That's for next year. So
let's worry about that down the road. We just got to get to football season.
Yep, football season.
John's looking thrilled. I can tell. Yeah. Oh, okay. Hold down your enthusiasm. Okay.
Thanks,
all right.
John. Thanks you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. We appreciate everything. Let's get out of here. Thanks for listening. We'll do it again. We are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, May the 4th on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS FM sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and a special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikondo. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, May the 3rd, year 2016. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.